Hi, I'm Zach Marquez, and today we're going to be looking into two of the largest data breaches ever recorded and what we can learn from them as secure software developers, and those would be the Yahoo and Microsoft data breaches. To kick things off, I really wanted to hammer home that thieves have always existed throughout history, and that in order to keep our data secure and our nation secure, we have to keep pace with them and advance past them instead of advancing by reacting to them. And so, to look at that as a case study, we're going to look at the Yahoo data breach and the Microsoft data breach, two of the largest data breaches to ever be recorded. All right, getting right into it with the 2013 Yahoo breach. It is the largest data breach known in history, with 3 billion impacted accounts, incalculable damages due to information being leaked and nobody knowing what happened to it, as the leak was only reported years after. And the stolen data included names, hashed passwords, and unencrypted security questions. So when I say that Pandora's box was opened, it really was. And to kind of get a handle on the scale, I included an image to show what one looks like all the way up to a billion, and the number of accounts that were breached were three of that. Getting into the attackers and motives of the attack, there were four hackers, and two of them were Russian FSB agents, and the FSB is a internal intelligence agency of Russia. There was an American and a Canadian hacker for hire, and only one of the hackers was convicted and testified in court and sentenced. And in this testimony, they revealed that the Russian FSB agents hired the Canadian to get into these Yahoo accounts and then use the information gained to get into 80 specific accounts. So the motive of it was to access personal accounts, and I believe to backdoor into governments and other organizations, because they were contracted to the Canadian was contracted to help get into 80 more specific accounts. So the technical weakness of the of Yahoo and the security failures include unprotected legacy code that just wasn't updated and still relied on security methods from the 1990s, specifically a hashing method that was developed in 1995. And this was used by the hackers to exploit forged cookies and get into the back end of Yahoo's servers and essentially gain access to all of their users, all 3 billion of them. And I would classify this as operational and implementation vulnerabilities because they fundamentally lacked secure code from the start, and then they just didn't fix it. And the operation was very ham-fisted and directly led to these accounts being leaked. And I included a picture of a breached castle wall to illustrate kind of more visually what was going on. By using outdated security methods, you're leaving a hole in the wall for people to get in. Now, the aftermath and consequences of the Yahoo technical breach are immense. And this was because disclosure was delayed by years by the company. And this was because nobody knows. Yahoo didn't give a reason, and it only came out a few months before they were supposed to be sold to Verizon. And during this whole hullabaloo, the Verizon acquisition, Yahoo was devalued by $350 million. This was followed by a $35 million fine by the SEC and irreversible damage to the reputation of Yahoo. The 2021 Microsoft server breach was a breach that was a 0-day exploit that impacted 250,000 servers. That's a quarter of a million. And the data stolen included names, passwords, configs, and address books. And the targets were governments, corporations, and academic institutes. And if that looks like the infrastructure of a nation, that's because it is, and it was an attack on the infrastructure of the Western world. So the attackers in Timeline, the attacker was a Chinese hacker group called Hafnium. The exploit that was exploited was a 0-day exploit in which the attackers got into developer computers and then used that to immediately get into the Microsoft server update day one after a patch. And this was followed by SSRF and remote code execution. And there was no ransom by the original perpetrators, but smelling blood in the water, thieves went in on the floundering corporations and institutions and demanded ransoms. So, for the vulnerability classification, I would classify it as design implementation vulnerabilities because by design there was a vulnerable backdoor left open to attackers, and implementation because the update was compromised from day zero. There was a rapid response from Microsoft, but a slower response from the clients. And this is a great example of how the vulnerabilities present themselves in hybrid infrastructure that put onus on both the operators of a software as well as the developers. So, to kind of draw things all together here, no technology or software is impenetrable, and security modernization and response time are worth their weight in gold. And all the time that you don't spend updating, you spend paying back tenfold in damages and to your reputation, as well as just damages caused to your company, to your constituents, and to your customers. For Yahoo specifically, security modernization and response time are key. For Microsoft, systems are not invulnerable just because they're new. And overall, I'd say the moral of the story is that cybersecurity is national security. And in these two recent uh, examples of data breaches and exploits, we can see that state actors use digital tools that everybody uses as a way to get at other nation states and to wage war in cyberspace in a sort of soft war. So, cybersecurity is national security. Thank you for your time.